Australia needs a national energy policy. Hello, my name is Paul Raftery and I'm a director with Projects RH and based in Sydney. Australia sadly lacks a national energy policy. Australia is a large island continent, blessed by nature with vast energy reserves, plus a relatively small but geographically diverse population. It's no secret that 90% of the population of Australia lives on the east coast in a band from the northern part of Australia to Adelaide and within 100 kilometres of the coast. The energy needs of Western Australia, and especially its capital Perth, is a separate topic for another occasion. Eastern Australia has high-grade thermal coal reserves, uranium, oil and gas, coupled with renewable opportunities including solar, wind and hydro. 2020 saw a world change, not only because of COVID-19, the recession we had, and because of the evolving attitude and pricing of fossil fuels around the world. Many countries looked at their long-term investment strategies. For Australia, the reality is that global and domestic community attitudes are changing. What they're wanting to see is a world moving away from burning fossil fuels to other energies such as renewables, hydrogen and nuclear. This is creating new technologies and jobs. As Australia's national anthem says, our land is abound in nature's gifts. Energy and resources are part of our history and are an essential part of our future. Many of the world's great religions have festivals which focus both on the sun as a source of energy and gold as a form of tribute. Over the centuries, wars have been fought and kingdoms founded over energy and resources. Today, Australia remains a significant exporter of fossil fuels, and there is no suggestion that this should change. These are essential for many countries and are growing at a faster rate than ever. At Projects RH, we are fortunate we have significant experience in both energy and resources. Many of our clients are attracted to us because we have these skills and have shown them that they can be transferred to other sectors. Our geographic profile includes stories of other nations and mining resources and energy in them. In 2020, our work included solar in both Queensland and Vietnam, coal from Australia to Asia, oil assets in Sri Lanka, and in Australia, energy storage technologies. As much of the world moves towards a commitment to global zero emissions in 2050, with a clear pathway to 2035, the Australian government seems to do nothing. And the problem is this impacts on investment. Investment in major energy projects, even transmission lines, is looked at over 30 years. The Liberal National Party coalition government has been in power in Australia since 2013. Tony Abbott's views on energy policy cost him his job as Prime Minister in 2015 to Malcolm Turnbull. And then Malcolm in turn lost his role to Scott Morrison in August 2018. Abbott had a very clear vision for Australia, remaining a low-cost energy country using the vast reserves of its high-grade coal. Turnbull had almost the opposite view, and he wanted to see Australia transform to new technologies, low carbon, and importantly, using the other blessings of Australia's wonderful sun. In all the turmoil, Scott Morrison emerged as the new Prime Minister, almost like a character out of Yes, Prime Minister, the UK BBC serial. He was the compromise candidate who sat in the middle. and he was seen as one who could heal the party after the wars between Abbott and Turnbull. The problem is, since August 2018, when Scott Morrison came to power, there has been no clear national energy policy. He appointed Minister Taylor, and whilst there have been lots of consultations and some papers, no hard decisions have been made. The market remains looking for guidance, and major investment has been withheld. So some projects which take 5 to 8 years to develop will have to give way to shorter term projects. So for example, a coal-fired power station with gas sequestration from today until it opened would probably take 8 to 10 years, where a gas-fired project could probably be up in 3 to 5 years. We may have no choices because we haven't been able to make the decisions. We do need an energy policy for Eastern Australia. About 25 million people need an energy policy. What we need to recognise also is we live in a world where we need to address the need to reduce emissions. The National Energy Policy is really for most of Australia and most of the burners of energy. What we've seen, however, is the states try to fill the gap. So the three most populous states, Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, seem to have their own energy policies. They have a clear pathway to 2050 of zero emissions, and they also have an intermediate pathway to 2035. As we have this, though, we constantly have the reminder that the federal government is looking at building a coal-fired power station, and it may support Snowy Hydro building gas-fired power. What we need is decisions, because what's happening is the lack of it's causing pricing decisions in the market. What we've seen is Victoria and Queensland go in one direction, and New South Wales effectively underwrite a base price for power. We don't have a cohesive national policy. We do need to have a cohesive price position so Australian energy can remain cost effective, so that Australian exporters can export even though they suffer from the tyranny of distance, which means they have to pay freight prices, and Australia has relatively high labour costs. Today, Australia remains one of the largest exporters of coal and LNG. That's not going to change. We also export iron ore and gold and uranium, lithium, diamonds and base metals. Australia also exports skills, such as beneficiation or improving these things, extracting gold out of rocks. Australia has massive technology advantages. And one of the great things we're seeing is Australian technology being invested in and developed to meet the ever-growing changes in energy patterns. In the year of COVID, 2020, the world has changed. And as we go into 2021, Australia has a huge opportunity because it's been impacted by far less than most countries by COVID. We also need to understand the impact of the election of Biden as president-elect. Whilst we won't see the details, we do know some of his policies. We do know, for example, also that the EU is proposing to impose a carbon tax type levy on products which come from countries which do not have net zero by 2050 policies. So we need to be ready. The third thing we need to understand is Australia's existing fossil fuel powered generation units are facing the end of their economic life. Most were built during the 1960s with a then life of 40 years. and Australia needs to either vastly invest in these or they need to have an alternative. What we are seeing, however, is nothing. And the states are reacting by saying we need to take short-term measures. So we need answers within 5 years. Hence, they are moving towards a short-term gas-fired solution. One of the surprises for me about COVID-19 was the rapid decline in the price of crude oil and oil products. We've also seen the closure of a number of oil refineries. And clearly in Australia, there will be a massive change in how we use oil products. I think it's a space we need to monitor because not only are we running the risk of losing oil products, but we will lose then the associated chemical industries. If Australia is to move towards a greater reliance on renewable energy, we also need to understand how we're going to manage it. We're going to need storage. And there's only a certain amount of pump storage that we can build because Australia is not blessed with vast lands of mountains and dams. We have 2 projects at the moment. We have the expansion of Snowy, what's called Snowy 2, and we have GenX centred in central Queensland. What we will need to see is batteries. And at the moment, batteries are an issue because their life and their reliability isn't fantastic. What we need to see is real investment in those technologies. And what we are very pleased to be doing is working with BatNav and Dr. Dave West as one example of people working in that field. And we see huge opportunity for work from Australia to be on the global stage. We will see an increasing reliance on battery technology, and we need to accept that's going to be part of life, and they need to be geographically diverse like the people they need to support. We also need investment in infrastructure, including power lines. In conclusion, resources and energy in Australia need to be invested in. They are large-scale, capital-intensive investments. They need to be long-term with long leads and long payback periods. These investments need a certainty of policy framework, not just tax incentives for this year or the next 3 years. They need to know what the market will be like and what prices they can build in their models. Until we have that certainty, projects will be delayed. At Projects RH, we are seeing people unwilling to invest in the projects they have brought to us because they can't get the certainty of pricing. We are seeing efforts by the New South Wales, Victorian and Queensland state governments to rectify this, but they do need a national approach. Timing is important, and we need to understand that what's happens in the local environment, being Australia, is also important. What we need to see is clear guidance from the national government as to a long-term policy. What is refreshing is that the opposition wants to work with the government to ensure that happens. But they don't have clear signs or guidelines yet either. What we do need is that national policy. And I hope that we will, by keep asking for it, get it. Thank you for your attention. My name is Paul Raftery and I'm a director with Projects RH based in Sydney. Ladies and gentlemen, goodbye for now.